welcome everybody. I'm so glad that you could join us today. My name is Gary Powell. I'm with the Caregiver Foundation, and we present these virtual support groups in an effort to give caregivers a forum to both learn and to help others learn and to just generally support each other. Caregiving can be a very lonely and overwhelming type of situation, so we need all the help we can get. What we're looking at today, we're going to look at a presentation on emergency preparedness for seniors and caregivers. The reason those are different is that seniors have needs that are usually a little more technical, a little bit more important than, say, teenagers, who may be more flexible and more able to adapt to changes because of a disaster. And caregivers have to be very careful that they are prepared, because we're now responsible for someone else's health and safety during a disaster or an emergency. So I'm going to start a PowerPoint presentation hopefully to keep me on track. Emergency preparedness for seniors and caregivers. It's important that we look at preparedness as a community effort and not just an individual effort. Community effort, because you alone cannot bring everything that you might need to bring to take care of your loved one in an emergency. For instance, can you bring enough depends to take care of mom for 7 to 14 days? That's a very big box. So you have to build, we'll talk about building community of community preparations as part of looking at all of these different areas. Well, we're going to look at several different areas. And Joel, that one was good. One of the first things that we have to realize is that we need to know what kind of risks we might be facing. Now, the last couple of months, we faced flooding. Just a couple of days ago, Oahu, for the first time in my life, faced the risk of lightning strikes. We had a bunch of them. Sometimes it might be a tsunami. It might be fires. There's things that happen that are completely out of our control. We need to be able to know what those are, or else we can't plan, and making a plan is essential. So when you're looking at the different types of risks, you make a plan, and your emergency preparedness is based on the type of emergency that you may respond to. For instance, if you're responding to a fire and you've got to run from the house because it's on fire, you may not care whether or not you take enough depends with you. Your focus is going to be more on an emergency blanket to wrap around mom to get her out of the house. But on the other hand, if it's a flood, you may want to make sure that you have all of the things that you need to be able to relocate to a shelter. We'll talk about what some of those are. So it's something that you can't put off. It's easy to want to put it off, but if you do, it's bound to be a disaster, because we don't know when an emergency is going to happen. That's why it's an emergency. Actually, last week, the weather report said we were going to be having these big rains on Oahu, and they actually came this time. So that kind of surprised me. But that was something that was a surprise, because often we'll get notices from the weather service and then nothing happens. We'll get a tsunami warning and then nothing happens. And we become very complacent and say, oh yeah, they're warning us again. Never mind. When I was growing up, we lived on the North Shore, and the tsunami sirens would go off. And our family never left until the last minute. And then if it looked like a tsunami was really going to happen, then we all piled into the car and drove up to Comsat Hill and watched from there. Today we have a lot better prediction models, but it's really important not to be complacent. When you prepare, when you have things set up, you can save your life and the life of the loved ones that you take care of. As a caregiver, your role is essential. The reason somebody needs care is they can't do it for themselves. So we have to step in and make that happen. You know what your loved one wants and needs. You are the one that can do the planning and make sure that you're comfortable with all of the arrangements that you have set up, and that you are the one that's going to be responding. So some of the things that can happen, we mentioned some of them, but look at this: severe weather, power outages. Anybody lose power yesterday or Friday? On Friday, we lost power here on Oahu all over. Our office, it kept going on and off, and finally it shut off for quite a while. Walmart's power went out. Sam's Club's power went out. All these different places, the power went out. And the only places with power are those that had backup generators. Polimomi Hospital, the fire department. I suppose the police department has, but I'm not really sure. But all of the traffic lights went out. There was absolute chaos around here. We need to know if it's going to get super hot or super cold. Here in Hawaii, we don't have to worry too much about snow. Who knows the way the weather's going? We don't know what's going to happen. But usually we can mitigate anything like extreme cold. But extreme heat can happen. And our loved ones that we're taking care of can really suffer from a period of extreme heat. So what kind of preparations do we make to provide relief from that? And then there are public health emergencies like COVID-19. That was a real wake-up call for most of us. How do we deal with that? When you're making a plan, you want to have a few things really well set. Don't leave them for the last minute. You want to think, what am I going to do if there's a fire? What am I going to do if there's a tsunami? What am I going to do if there's a flood? Are we in danger? Look at these areas, and you may have to have more than one chapter in your plan. Make sure you know what evacuation routes are available. I love the little signs we have on Oahu. I'm not sure about the rest of the state, but it says entering tsunami zone and then exiting tsunami zone. It cracks me up because the exiting ones are so far up the hill. It'd be really an amazing thing if the tsunami got that high. But they're an attempt to help us identify where we could go if we needed to. You need to have the same type of thing thought through for floods. This weekend, the road around Waimea Bay was closed to try and or rather not repair, but put some safety net on the rocks that have been falling. But then the other side of the island got closed down because of an accident. So all of a sudden, a great portion of the North Shore and on toward Kaneohe was kind of frozen. There weren't any alternative roads. That actually could have been an emergency. You might have needed to get dad home for medication at a certain time. So even things that don't rise up to the Department of Emergency Planning, those could be an emergency for you. So you've got to think through, what are the medical needs? What are the medications? What kind of equipment might you need? Can you get those at a shelter? Can you take them to a shelter? But do you know how to actually do it? Do you know how to get to the evacuation shelter? Do you know how to identify where they are? And maybe even practice what's going on. An emergency kit, this is such a hard thing because we all know we need water, we need food, we need the medicine, we need first aid, we need flashlights and batteries, we need to have waterproof containers for important documents, we need personal hygiene items and things that can make someone feel safer. Recently, we helped a person relocate, and the only thing that helped that person feel safe was this funny little stuffed animal that was on her bed. And we were able to give that to her, and you could just see the tension go out of her face and her body because she had to be moved. If that's something that you know your loved one will feel more comfortable in an emergency situation, make sure that that bunny or bear or whatever it is on the bed is part of your evacuation kit or your emergency kit. Flashlights and batteries. There are flashlights now that can run on batteries, or they're rechargeable through a, USB cord or some sort of a battery charging thing. I don't know all the terms, but you can get all kinds of batteries and flashlights and lanterns and everything, but don't get so much that it becomes too heavy to carry or too bulky to carry. Food is not as important as we think. If you're going to be in an emergency and you're going to be at home, food is more important to be really careful about. So, what kind of food? The easiest thing is to make sure you have canned food. Make sure you have enough water. Most places recommend a gallon of water for each person per day. Now, if I was going to pack up that much and take it with me, I just have two of us in my household, but that would be 14 gallons for a week. That's a lot of water. Now, if I'm taking care of someone, that adds another 7 gallons. If I have a kid in the family, that's another 7 gallons. Most of us are not going to be able to transport that much water. So you might want to look and find a really good water purifier. They make them in very small sizes now. They're slow to use, but they can be used to clean water up to the point where you can actually consume it reasonably safely. Medications. For caregivers, you need to know what medications are essential and what medications could be skipped. Most medications need to be taken as the doctor prescribed when they're indicated. But some medications, like maybe baby aspirin, you could actually skip several days of that and it wouldn't affect your heart necessarily. Be really aware. Ask the doctor, which of all these medications do I need to make sure I have extra quantities of in case we have to evacuate for an emergency? Get them to make you a list and say, how long can I keep those medications? How often do I need to change what's in the emergency kit? I keep medicines way too long. My daughter loves to come in and clean out my medicine cabinet. She just threw away 7-year-old Tylenols. They still work, but she decided that was a terrible thing. I shouldn't have anything that old. And probably you shouldn't. So check with your medical providers, with your pharmacist, and build yourself a list. March 31st, you need to change all of these medications, get 90-day supplies, get 60-day supplies, whatever it is you need to take with you, and then keep those fresh. First aid kits. It's amazing. First aid kits now are smaller and smaller and smaller, but you need to have enough bandage material where you can bind up a bleeding wound. If I hit my arm on something these days, I just bleed like a pig. It's terrible. My dad's worse. But if someone accidentally gets cut while they're evacuating, you've got to have something to be able to stem that without ripping off your clothes and tying it on and then leaving yourself exposed. So have a good first aid kit. First aid kits, bandages, gauze, neosporin or something like that, some kind of ointment. Some people like to have aloe or aloe, however you like to say it, the liquid type on hand in case of burns. Things like thermometer, so you can tell if somebody has a temperature or not. Think about the things that you use every day and things that you've used maybe with kids in your life. Make sure they're in your first aid kit. And important documents, let's see what those are. A copy of your post, of your loved one's post, physician's order for life-sustaining treatment, copy of the Advanced Healthcare Directive, copy of a power of attorney, copy of trust documents if those are appropriate. Not the whole trust. You don't need to take that whole big giant 3-ring binder that the attorneys give you. You can take the trust summary. And most of the attorneys now are providing the documents on a flash drive. That's an easy one to put in an emergency kit to take with you. But make sure all of these documents are in waterproof, plastic waterproof containers of some sort. A birth certificate is very handy. Identification documents, Social Security, Medicare, health insurance, all of those things. Put them in that plastic container and close it up tightly and keep those. And then personal items. Personal items are everything from something that makes you feel good, like that stuffed animal, to basic hygiene items, toothbrush, toothpaste, deodorant, uh, powders, lotions, things that you or your loved one normally use to keep life as comfortable as possible. Those need to be in some form in your emergency kit. If you're putting them into unlabeled containers, they're only unlabeled until you get something in them, and then you got to label it. Please don't just have stuff and then somebody needs to help you and they take out a container, they haven't got a clue what it is. So be sure when you fill a container with something, label it. Here are these wonderful recommendations here. Let me go back. So non-perishable food, we talked about canned food, flashlights, batteries, documents, all of these things, very, very important. Equally important is who you're going to call if an emergency happens. Ghostbusters won't be any help to you at all. You need to have a list of important contacts. If I come on you during an emergency and you need help, I need to know who to call. Are you married? Or do you have a partner? Do you have a child? Do you have a parent? Who is it that needs to be notified that can give me, as an emergency responder, background information so that I can respond in an appropriate way to the needs that you have? Be sure that your phone is set to allow local alerts and notifications. Now, how many of you had it on your phone when we had that North Korean missile fiasco? Did your telephone go off and go nuts? Mine certainly did. It's important to be able to get those announcements. Sometimes you'll get them and you'll think, oh man, aren't they ever going to stop? Because they're giving you the same announcement again and again. But it's essential. If something really critical happens, the civil defense will put the alert out. And if your phone is set correctly to receive alerts, you'll get it no matter if your phone is on silent, no matter if your phone is set to block all calls, those will come through anyway. Think about your loved one and your neighbors. Do they have any help? Can you share this type of a presentation with them and help them become prepared? And if you have to evacuate, are you able to look in on the neighbor next door that you know is 96 and doesn't walk well, but doesn't have anyone with them? Your first priority is your family and your loved one. Your second priority is anybody else you can help without neglecting your own family. And think about, how am I going to communicate if my phone doesn't work? If lightning strikes several cell towers at the same time, chances are cell signals won't go through. So you have to think, how else am I going to be able to communicate? My daughter in Germany has me call her on this thing called WhatsApp. Don't ask me how it works. Somehow it goes through the internet instead of through the airwaves. But I can make phone calls to her, perfectly clear, perfectly good, but she can get them even though she's in an area that normal cell phone communication doesn't work well. So maybe you need to become aware of that type of program. But if all of that doesn't help, how are you going to communicate? Do you have a central place that your whole family knows that's the meetup point? If a real emergency happens, someone will be there and the rest of the family can figure out how to get there. But that's a way of communicating, even though it's not direct. Have a place put together. We like to say that our place for our family is my father's home in Pupukea. It's high enough to be away from tsunamis. It's far enough away from military installations not to be a target. It has lots of land that could be used to grow food. I mean, there's a lot of good things about that place. Getting there, now that would be interesting. The highways weren't in. There's a back mountain trail, but that's an extreme one. You may say, well, I think that Liberty House, when we don't have Liberty House, Macy's at Pearl Ridge, the top floor, that's going to be our meeting point. Okay, it's pretty high, it's pretty solid, and it's a place where people can easily connect. But for you, I don't know where it'll be, but have one. Be sure that you bring glasses, hearing aids. If someone is wearing a spinal stimulator like I do, it's like a pacemaker in your back, interrupts pain signals. Make sure you have the charger for it. I don't think an emergency will last 2 months, but if you don't have that charger, it's going to be hard to maintain that particular piece of hardware, have it doing its job. Pacemakers, make sure you know when the pacemaker was put in. Is there any problem with it? Be sure that you have things like family pictures, blanket, things that are just normal everyday things, but have some of them. Now, they make some blankets now that are very, very, very thin, but are very, very warm. You can just look for thin camping blankets on Amazon or somewhere. You'll find them. But think about glasses, 1 pair, 2 pairs, hearing aids, batteries for them, important. And if you have a pet, it's really important to plan emergency for that pet. Do you have dog food? Do you have bags to pick up after your pet? You do not want them making a mess around everybody else that's trying to evacuate. You have to take care of that. Is your pet chipped? If not, go to the vet or to the Humane Society and get your dog chipped now, or your cat, or your guinea pig, or whatever it is. I don't know if they chip birds, so that might be a problem. But think, if I take my dog with me, what's going to happen? Do I have a bowl to give that dog food and beverage? Collapsible bowls, easy for hikers. They work really, really great. You just uncollapse them, bring them out, and you can use it for water. You can fold it back up and it becomes very small, and you can pack it away again. So just keep thinking of those things. If your loved one is not able to walk on their own, if they use a walker, you've got to have that walker. If they can't use a walker, how else are you going to get them around? Do you have what's called a transport chair? It's a lightweight wheelchair. And if your loved one needs a wheelchair normally, you don't have to bring the power chair. You don't have to bring that great big 300-pound chair. You can get a collapsible transport chair that will work fine in an emergency. Is your loved one on oxygen? If so, you need to talk to your oxygen supplier about how do you handle oxygen in an emergency. Oxygen is flammable. The tanks can blow up. So you've got to make sure you know how to handle those things carefully. Do you know the person's language? If I was taking care of my mother-in-law in an emergency, my Japanese is not very good, but she doesn't speak English at all. Well, she's passed now, but when we used to take care of her. So you have to be very realistic about that. Do you have a caregiver that would be coming with you? Does that caregiver speak English adequately to be able to communicate the needs of your loved ones to perhaps a service person? Cognitive support, this is something that you'll have to practice, and maybe we should do a whole workshop on this. Cognitive support in an emergency is the ability to provide mental stability to the people around you. So you've got to figure out, how am I going to lower the panic in me, communicate clearly with others, and let them know they're safe they're taken care of, and that you're going to be there for them. Service animals are part of that cognitive support. They're also part of the physical support, but it's very, very important that if your loved one needs a service animal, or if you need a service animal, make sure you've provided for it. Make sure you've got the service indicator vest or whatever indicator thing you have on that animal, so that others will know that's a service animal, that's not just a pet, so that they can help take care of everything. There are all kinds of sources, and I'm going to put some in the chat later, resources and checklists and all sorts of things that are really good and able to help everybody from AAA to many faith organizations have really good workbooks, really good checklists. Find one and make it your own and use it. Try to make more than one copy. Make sure that the people in your family have a copy of that handbook for emergencies, so that everybody's kind of working off the same information. Not, oh, did you remember to bring such and such? Or I bet you forgot. Have it all together. The federal government actually has a very good website on preparing for disasters and emergencies, and they've got some great checklists also. I say I make it sound like they don't have anything good. The government has put out some great publications, and they're available free. But I have some on our chat that I'll put up in a little bit. The Area Agency on Aging in Hawaii, you can look them up, and they have booklets for that. The Emergency Management Office of the state and of the city and county, both of those have good resources. 211, of course, you can always call them and ask them about anything. And if you're a member of a temple or a church, ask them, does our denomination, does our faith, does our community of believers have anything that I should be paying attention to for my loved one? Have we developed any disaster response teams? I know the Baptist Church has, I forget what they call it, but they've got an extremely organized disaster response program where they send people all over everywhere with whole kitchens and everything that they bring in. They usually get them up before FEMA's ever around. But see what your congregation or your temple has for your community. Don't depend on a national agency. In 1969, we had huge waves on the North Shore, 50 plus feet, did all kinds of damage. The roads were closed, couldn't get in, couldn't get out. It was terrible. Red Cross couldn't get in. Nobody could get in. This church on the North Shore had a small school, and all of the teachers lived nearby that school. They brought all the canned food that they could find in their house and put it all into this gigantic pot and cooked this sort of a stew-like thing and cooked rice and fed scores of people until the government could finally get in and bring in tents and blankets and food. Their food was donuts and coffee, but that's okay. I love donuts. But your church may have a plan, and if they don't, you might want to work with them on developing a response plan. So just look at that and think about it. If you look in the chat, you'll see some links to different types of checklists that you can get to. There's a graphic there that talks about things that you want to pay attention to. These are just a few. You can go on Google and find tons of very good pieces of information and checklists and things that can help you. The whole process, and the most important part of it, is pay attention, develop in advance. I see that we have a comment here about living in a condo. I'm in a condo too. The largest population number in our condo is over 70 years old. There's a lot of people who need extra help. So what could that be in a condo? If it's severe weather, it might be moving everybody to a mid-level in the condo and opening up your condo and everybody else's to that group of people. So there is a single place that seems to be the safest. Trying to use an elevator during an emergency is not a good idea. But if you're 90 years old, using the stairs may be an impossibility. It may be fine if you're 90 years old, but there's a lot of 90-year-olds that simply would not be able to use those things. If it's fire, now you have a whole different issue. And someday we'll do a whole session on what do you do about condos and fires and how to prepare as a caregiver to respond to that. It's very important. Electricity can go away. What are you going to do? In our condo, everything is electric. There's no gas. But we do have a small single burner, propane-driven cook thing. We can use that. You want to be careful with it, but you could use that. It's small, so it can be tucked away in a cupboard with 2 or 3 cans of propane with it. That's one thing. Do you have enough lanterns so that you have some kind of light to get around? I like this, regular gas generators are not okay. However, these days you can actually get a generator that plugs into the wall during the day, has a solar power out on your lanai if needed, but it stores enough power in that battery form of a generator to run basic things for quite some time. So you might want to actually look into having something like that on hand. I like this. The condo maintains a list of seniors that need assistance. I've got to talk to our management about that because I don't believe we have that. And that's a very smart thing. So satellite uplinks, those are also really, really good. When I was in Japan, suddenly my phone began telling me that it couldn't connect to the satellite because I was in the basement. Well, we were in the basement, but I had no idea that my phone could connect to a satellite. It was quite a surprise. But you're right. That is another way that we can get through in the when cell service goes down and if WhatsApp doesn't work, there is that satellite connection. So that's really a smart thing to learn how to use. Having a mainland communications hub, somebody that other people can contact if they need to and find out things about you. Another one that I always like is lotsofhelpinghands.com. This is usually used for caregivers to organize caregiving with volunteers and things, but you could also use, it's LOTSA helpinghands.com. You can put all kinds of information in there and you can decide who can access that information and other people won't be able to. So very, very important. And Susan, we're sorry you had to leave, but I'm glad you were here for that. Solar crank radios. Mine have not worked well. I'm sure there are some that work well. I sat there grinding that thing and grinding that thing, and I could get maybe a minute of connection to a radio station or something, and that was it. So I have to find something better. But the whole idea is there are tools out there that we can use. Find out about them. Go on the internet. Learn what's out there and what's available. What other things have you folks put together in preparation for an emergency?